All right, second game, game two. Now, to start here, I'm going to state my bias here. I have always lived, breathed, and died been a Chicago Bears fan. And because of that, I'm going to try my best to be unbiased. I'm going to try my best to give my, not just let the hype get into me and let it just, I'm going to let everything ride. I'm just going to try to be my best, most honest answer here on this game. But I just want everyone to know, and when everyone, I mean no one, or like my mom or something, something stupid, like the three people who are ever going to see this. But this is also going to be our most in-depth breakdown game. So let's get into it. So Green Bay is 1.5 point favorites in this one. This one's going to be in Chicago. Temperature shouldn't be crazy. Don't know what the wind is going to be, but it should be about 30, 32 degrees there in Chicago. Kicks off at 7 o'clock Central Time. So it's going to be a night game there on Saturday. And with it being 1.5 point favorites for Green Bay, that's a fantastic line. That's exactly what it should be. I mean, it can even be half a point. I mean, I guess that's money line, but that's the perfect line. The last four matchups, we're going back to last year and being the dysfunction that is Matt Eberflus and the entirety last year, the 2024 Bears, just dumpster fire. But in the last four matchups, each game has come down to the final play. I mean, this year we saw in week 14, I believe it was, we saw Bears, we saw the Bears in the red zone, fourth, was it a third or fourth down play, something like that? And they were going for it. Caleb rolls left. He throws it, doesn't put quite enough on it. And we saw a flipping coverage in which the guy he went from DJ to Komet, and he just had a great pick. And that sealed the game. Packers win. They win by, I believe it was seven, was the finals. They won by seven. 2 weeks later, we see another matchup between Bears and the Packers. This one in Chicago this time. And that was when we saw the fourth quarter comeback by the Bears. I believe it was 13 points they had in the fourth quarter to force overtime, force the four and out, force the turnover on downs against the Packers on the first drive. And then 2, 3 plays later, we saw the miraculous deep ball to DJ Moore that sealed the game. And I mean, that was just a fantastic game. So even if that we're just basing that line based on those two games, both games came down to one play, the final game, and extra time. It could have came down to Packers winning it again with the final play against the Bears in Chicago. If he didn't have that fade throw to Walker in the corner of the end zone, that game would have been over. The Packers probably would have won the division. And we're not talking about this game in Chicago. We're talking about the Bears going to Lambeau, and that's a different animal on its own. But since this game is going to be in Chicago, that crowd is going to be nasty. It is going to be loud, and despite it being one of the smallest capacity stadiums in the NFL, I think it's going to be an insane atmosphere this weekend. So going back into last year, both games were decided by a walk-off field goal. So first game that they played in Chicago, Cairo Santos lines up, blocked field goal, Packers win. In Lambeau, same circumstance, almost the exact same yardage, I think. This one barely goes through. Cairo just barely gets it in there. Bears win. So 2-2 head to head, these teams in the last four matchups. And so let's move into the Packers. Let's talk about them a little bit. So the Packers should be the favorite. They absolutely should be the favorite. I'm surprised this line isn't a little bit more, but I understand why it is so even. If this was like a 3.5 point favorite Packers team, I would hammer the Bears. Easy, because it's been so close. That's just an easy cover, just based on those games. But they should be the favorites. Bears have not had the lead against them in all four of those games, except for the last second in which they won. They didn't hold the lead at any moment in those four games. So it makes sense why they're the favorites. They also rested their starters in week 18 to make sure that not just Jordan Love, but others come back healthy. And looking at the injury report today, they looked like everyone's basically coming back. They're looking pretty healthy today. They're going to get Zach Tom back. Jordan Love should be 100%. They're still going to be without Michael Parsons, but the injury bug has been them as of late. So for them to kind of rest everyone, get everyone healthy, Hopefully they can put together a game plan that can take advantage of this Bears defense, which has been either taking the ball away or giving up a touchdown. It's the opposite. It's basically a West Coast defense, and it's either touchdown or check down. No, it's either touchdown or turnover. So, but because of that, let's go to let's talk about the reality of the Packers right now. Their last month of football has not been great. They have not. They have lost 4 games straight. You know, albeit two. You can really almost call it three with that Bears game, but 2 full games without Jordan Love. And both games weren't really pretty with Willison. So week 17 and 18, 17 was against the Ravens. They kind of got blown out by the Ravens, and that was a game that they must win. They were still in the fight for the division. They were still in fight, you know, and they just got blown away. And it felt like it wasn't close for them. And the Ravens are a good team, but it just fell apart for them. So that's what worries me about the Packers this week because of week 17 and in week 18. Even if it was a dress rehearsal and you're putting out the backups, they didn't put up points on offense. And you against the Vikings, what was it? It was like a 3-19, 16 game. Let's look at it real quick. I got ESPN open real quick. So last week against the Vikings, they lost 16-3. They scored their 3 points in the fourth quarter. Um, let's make sure we are muted here. Perfect. Okay, so they lost. Vikings come up, put up 13 points in the first half. They answered with another three in the fourth. Clayton Tune, not even Malik Willis was the starter, but Clayton Tune, he threw for 34 yards. And they just ran the ball a lot. Brooks, he looked decent in his times when he filled in for Josh Jacobs, or it might have been Wilson, one of the two. But they they both did all right running the ball. We saw one where it was a huge loss of yards. I think it was Wilson who did that. But it's just bad decision making there by the running back. But because this team, like, yeah, you held Minnesota to 16 points, and you know what? Nine threw for 182 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. That's another box of can of worms there where I don't know. JJ McCarthy just hasn't looked like the guy at all. But anyway, for that game, for you to only put up 3 points and it to be so late in the game, it doesn't inspire confidence to me that this team is exactly clicking on offense. Maybe things are missing. I don't know what's going on, but that's the reality where the Packers are. They've lost 4 straight, and the offense hasn't looked great for 3 of the games. So let's move on. Oh, and I forgot to even talk about the Broncos game. The Broncos game I think, was the biggest must win of that state. Because you just come off beating the Bears, you win that, you have clear line to the division, and they were just kind of never in it. Broncos just kind of pounded and pounded and pounded, kept laying on points, laying on points, laying on points, and they weren't in it, and they got kind of out of it late. So let's move on to the Bears. Bears have lost 2 straight, something they haven't done since weeks 1 and 2. After week 2, they went on an insane run. They won a lot of games straight, and then they lost to I believe it was the Ravens. Came back. That's when you saw a lot of those comeback heroics, a lot of the insane plays that you get the highlight reel. That's what the Fox team and all the other teams want to nonstop talking about. The cardiac bears, all this that. They just need to come out hot on offense. But they've lost 2 straight, something they haven't done since week 1 and 2. And they played most of their starters in week 18. So they had a few people that they rested, just to be safe on. And against in week 17, you played the 49ers, and that game, offense looked fantastic. As a Bears fan, watching that game, it was like, you know what? I know the defense is going to give up points. I know they're not great. They can first force turnovers, and they've been fantastic at it. They lead the league in that. So if they force turnovers, they're going to have a good shot to win the game. They had a shot late in the game. They had the ball back with 2 minutes, and you know what? Penalties killed them, intentional grounding killed them, and you know what? You gave the ball back, and after that, you knew the game was over. It was a battle of who. It was both defenses were a movable force. No one was stopping anything that day. So, and then against the Lions, what did they do against the Lions? Against the Lions, it was kind of uninspiring. The defense looked flat. The offense looked basic. It looked like a preseason scrimmage game. It was a dress rehearsal, but they played him the whole game. They rested Ozzy Trapillo. He's been dealing with a little bit of a knee injury, but they rested him. He should be good to go. I'm thinking for the wild card game. I don't think there's a chance where they're resting him. Worst case scenario, backup tackle who's been on injury reserve came back today on the practice that's been active on the 21-day IR practice window has been open on him, and that is Braxton Jones. He's been serviceable for his first 3 years. I don't know if he's in the year 3 or 4, but he's been serviceable as a starter, just not the same guy as Ozzy. Ozzy's been getting better and better each week, but the elephant in the room is the defense with the Bears. Against the Lions, they allowed so many yards so easily, and they kept getting bailed out by forcing field goals. And yeah, that's one way to win games, but I'd rather you get 3 and outs. I'd rather you stop letting them get past midfield after 2 or 3 plays. And Dennis Allen, there's been so many times where they've been playing this man coverage defense, or it'll be a match coverage zone, in which the linebackers are so focused on the tight end and the running back that crossing routes are just destroying them. We saw it all last week with Jameson Williams and Amon Ross St. Brown. You having guys in man coverage and they're crossing the face, and none of the corners are playing press. They're not jamming them at the line. They're not slowing them down at all. And this pass rush by the Bears has been pretty bad all year. Montez Sweat has been good at getting that to the quarterback, but you can double team him, you can chip him. He isn't an elite pass rusher, but he's a really good pass rusher. Grady Jarrett, he's been all right. Pressure up the middle has been to be desired. I think I like Javon Dexter. I like Grady Jarrett. They need to get some real pressure from the inside. I think that's something they got to do in the offseason, but the pressure just isn't good enough. Booker, he's been a dog. He's been turning it on recently, but he just isn't getting quite home to the quarterback. But last week, they were getting significant pressure on Goff. I felt that the pocket was closing a little bit faster. Sometimes when I watch them play, it feels like they have a giant spear around them where they're just untouched and has all the work time in the world. It looked more like a real pass rush when they were getting closer. So I'll take that as a win. You are getting closer to them, but you just got to get home on those. But if you keep letting up the huge plays, you're never going to win. You're going to allow big plays. And, if you get Christian Watson, you get Jaden Reed, you let them do those plays again, they're going to burn you like in the first game we saw. So let's move on to the Bears offense. We talked about how bland they looked last week. And we talked about, they keep having, you know, pre-snap penalties, false starts, uh, illegal formation, less delay of games. We're not really seeing those. Caleb's done a great job of, getting the play out, knowing the offense a lot better. And for that, I'm very proud of them. But last week the whole team, I think, seemed off mentally, not focused, and was just missing assignments. They didn't feel all in. They felt like, you know what, worst case, we're in the playoffs. We're in the playoffs. There's tomorrow. There's tomorrow. And I'm going back to the old Rocky quote with Apollo Creed. There is no tomorrow now. Nothing is guaranteed tomorrow. You have to go out and earn everything they have in front of them. They have to go out and earn it. And let's get to our take. So, to the conclusion of this, I think that I think it's going to be a close game. I think the Bears come out hot. And because I know I've been dogging on both of these teams' offense, the Bears' defense especially. But I've been dogging on this team. I'm like, you know what? They just look uninspired. They're not good. They're getting off the hot starts. They have to come back late and they get to turn on late. Here's what we saw today on Tuesday, January 6th. Ben Johnson said on Tuesday that they quote, are going to go all out for this game. And because of that, I expect to see a master I expect to see him pull out his best game plan he has done, not just as a Lions, as an offensive coordinator, but as a coach. I think he's going to pull out his best game plan today. I don't think it's going to be all glitz and glamour and tricks. I think we're going to see a few of those, but I think we're going to see a lot of like, come out, be gritty, put him in the dirt, disrespect them, just punch him in the mouth and just get those dirty rushing yards and then play off that. If they come out and they can run the ball, If they can run the ball against the Packers, this team is going to look good, you know. And he's got to go all in. He knows that there's nothing to leave. I don't think they're going to leave anything behind. They're not going to leave any regrets. They're going to everything's on the table for them. And because of that, I think it's going to be almost not almost a shootout, but I think both teams are going to come out hot. You know, I think if they can do those power running plays and they can get long drives and just kind of wear down the defense, rest your defense, but wear down and just and pummel that Packers defense. I like them in that case because when they do that, then it opens those deep plays, not just like a trick play, but longer. Because if you're focused on the run, you're going to get the linebackers to hesitate. You're going to get the defensive line to hesitate. The corners, they'll hesitate a little bit too, but it's going to allow deeper, more long developing plays to open up. And that's what they really need to do. And when they hit those plays, I think I think we're going to see the most focused, and I think we're going to see the most locked in and competitive Caleb Williams we have ever seen. I think he's going to be dialed in. I think he is. I think this whole team, if they can come out in this game like they did in the second game in Chicago, start of that game, they were out for blood. You know, they were going out, they were trying to. I mean, we saw it on the opening kickoff. We had guys jumping on the pile. The play's clearly over. People are trying. They're trying to knock the snot out of the Packers. They were out for blood. And I think we're going to see both sides really come out that physical, that just I hate you, you hate me, let's fight, let's get it on. You know, I think that's what we're going to see. Um, Injury wise, we should see Roma Dunze back. Ozzy Trabello, I mentioned earlier, should be back. Kyler Gordon, his 20-day window is activated today. I'm less optimistic about him just because we haven't heard too much and we haven't heard too much optimism. There's a good chance they trying to keep him kind of secret. They're going to try to like not comment on him very much and then elevate him. I think that might be the case. Otherwise, I think it's just going to be it's a decoy. They're trying to get him in. And then C.J. Gardner Johnson, the other nickel corner that they have, nickel corner, nickel safety, whatever you want to call it. I call it I like to call it just that hybrid secondary. That all-purpose corner. I think those guys are the most valuable in the league. I think we're seeing that like Jalen Ramsey, those kind of guys. I think we're seeing those guys be more and more respected. But I think those two, I'm looking more on the doubtful side. But then on the other side of things, it's going to be, all right, if one of those guys play, can they stop those crossing routes? Can they stop those plays from developing? So Packers wise, we should see Jordan Love play. I was heard last week that he would have been an all go, like full go in week 18, but they decided to rest him because they were locked into the 7th seed. So Jordan Love, 100% is going to play. They should have Zach Tom back. They should have other guys coming back. They should be pretty healthy going into this one. So out of superstition, I'm not going to give my take on who I think is going to win. I think regardless, money line bet is the safest bet here. Um, damn, I want to say the Bears are going to win. I want to say the Bears are going to win, but there's a good chance that this defense, they just can't stop the Packers. And if the Bears defense can force a turnover, I think the Bears win. If the Bears defense look as lost as they do against the Lions, and here's the thing, if the Packers, they're not going to settle for those field goals, they're going to score touchdowns on those plays. If they can do that, then I think the Packers will take it out here.